worth about $100 billion by 2017, so it is big. But it also attracts some real-world nastiness. Game developer Brianna Wu, who's head of development at the Boston-based giant Space Cat company, fled her home over the weekend after receiving a series of specific violent threats directed at her and her family on Twitter. Now, she's the third female game designer in the last 3 months to be a victim of harassment and death and rape threats. It seems to be down to something called Gamergate, and that's a movement alleging corruption in game reviews, but also, apparently, some of people taking that hashtag Gamergate are also exhibiting very unpleasant, misogynistic Twitter troll issues. As Ben Gilbert, editor at technology news website Engadget, explained, it all began back in August with a game developer called Zoe Quinn.
The allegation was that her game Depression Quest, which is a free game, does not cost anything, was given positive coverage because she had slept with one particular journalist. The journalist in question was a gentleman named Nathan Grayson, who, for full disclosure, is a friend of mine. And he was said to have slept with her and that he had given positive coverage as a result on Kotaku, a website that is owned by Gawker Media, and that has all been proved false. He's, I believe, not written anything about Depression Quest on Kotaku.
But then the second issue in this, in a way, is that she got a huge amount of hateful and sexist abuse, didn't she? Right.
So this is the kind of really ugly side of Gamergate, and it's been pervasive throughout the past few months, and it's been targeted at folks including myself. And the harassment of folks like Zoe Quinn and Anita Sarkeesian and most recently Brianna Wu is really awful and has been, it's been a huge component of the Gamergate movement, for lack of a better word.
Do you not think that this is something that is clear about the nature of this, of what's going on, that this is misogynistic, this is against women?
I think it so powerfully colors the whole thing that it kind of overtakes like the other arguments, right? Any concerns about actual journalism ethics or anything else, like you're saying, it's so specifically has targeted these three women, and it's been so awful. I mean, people have had to leave their homes, and that's because they feel so threatened. And absolutely, I think that overtakes any of the argument for it being a more legitimate thing.
And is it just coincidence that they happen to be women who are being so viciously attacked?
No, I don't think it's a coincidence at all, right? I think I think that's part of a underlying core of a very infantile and very aggressive part of the internet culture, and it's I think something it kind of stems from these places like 4chan and Reddit, where there's sometimes these very insipid communities that have really that organize these awful attacks on people. I mean, there's been published stuff that Zoe Quinn has published it, and Anita Sarkeesian did a great speech recently at the XOXO festival about this, where she showcases all the very small group of folks who are coordinating these awful, hateful attacks on them. And it's hard to necessarily see it, though, that they are championing a cause for that stuff, whereas they just seem like they are super anti-feminism and as a group want to attack social justice, which it's bizarre. But it's not representative of a larger group, right? It's such. But
is it bizarre because the gamer culture is so historically so male dominated? Maybe that is a reflection of that reality.
I think historically you're right, and 20 or 30 years ago that would have been so much more accurate, but today it's just so much larger, right? The numbers that there are on these events that are tied to gaming, the most recent League of Legends event that was sold out Madison Square Garden with tens of thousands of people, and there are a lot of guys there, but there's also a lot of women, and it's such a large medium at this point that it's hard to say it's a male medium because it's not anymore. I don't know. It's hard for me to specifically pin it to just it being a traditionally male-dominated medium. It was traditionally, but so much has changed in the last 15 years that even the last 10 years that it's hard to call it that anymore. You know.
Ben Gilbert there of Engadget. I should say you had a lot of Twitter traffic on this issue, even while we were playing that interview out. A lot of people, I think, would cast themselves perhaps within sympathy to Gamergate and saying it's not just about that kind of thing. It is about trying to understand which direction games are going in, and some very real issues out there, quite apart from obviously the trolling that clearly has been going on. But Shigadami, I mean, this is a very... obviously, it's a massive industry and creates a lot of passion and interest on all sides, and people feel very strongly about it, but it does seem to have, in some areas, descended to a very vicious and nasty level, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right. On both sides, the industry is inhabited by fairly young people who are not always very mature in how they handle things. And to give some context over here, Quinn herself, she's a very entrepreneurial woman, and all power to her. On the other hand, she had made the sort of exposing the sexist stereotypes of women in video games her personal crusade, which of course was a poke in the eye of all the gamers who like to play these games. So that was kind of like the backdrop in which her activity was viewed. I think the bigger concern over here is, why did this story about her infidelity kind of take the whole gamer world with storm? And the reason is that the journalistic ethics in the coverage of games are really, really something to be worried about. Historically, Nintendo, which was the original pioneer in the gaming industry, had its own magazine that used to rate its own games. And so the world between the journalists who cover the games and report on them and the people developing the game it's a sort of an incestuous little
It's
world.
very interesting you say that, because that certainly is the core of a lot of people who are tweeting to me now are talking about. They're saying there are issues. I suppose there's a division between what is clearly misogynistic, ghastly nastiness that is being directed at some people, but some real issues perhaps behind this.
So when the story about Quinn and her liaisons with this journalist...
Well, let's say it's alleged. I was going to say they are denied.
Right. I was just about to say that. Alleged, there was the bare allegation of it was enough to inflame this world. Remember, as you said, this is a $100 billion industry, and when you see one side as gaining an unfair advantage, using tactics that are known to be employed in this industry, the whole thing kind of blew a lid.
It is interesting, isn't it? I mean, Simon, just the scale of this. I mean, I think a lot of people, perhaps more your age and my age, I'm saying, perhaps see this or have seen it as something not a bit peripheral, a bit outside the normal mainstream. But with the amount of money that's involved, the number of people who clearly feel passionately about it, it has to be taken seriously, doesn't it?
Well, this has been, some people have elevated this to a discussion about the role of gaming and does it have artistic merit and so on and so forth. And they've seen this massive upswell in ugliness as a sort of grassroots response to that attempt to beautify gaming. But look, there's a great quote here. Games became an increasingly consumer-oriented product, appealing to gamers with satisfying solitary experiences. I mean, that kind of gives you a good summary. That's from Wikipedia of what kind of individuals spend a lot of time doing gaming.
I know that these people, they get together, they talk to each other over Skype links and all kinds of things.
They get together.
It does happen. I've seen it.
Yeah, but mainly they're talking about the game that they're playing, aren't they?
Well, yeah, but they're talking. It's a social experience in the same way going to the theatre or the cinema or something. And it's in the cinema terms, it's interesting. The money is at that level.
It's not a social experience. Come on, it's sitting in a room.
They talk to each other. They talk about the games. I think you're characterising this with a bit of prejudice, Simon, if I may say.
It's not prejudiced. I mean, you're sitting in a room. You might be talking to people in the rest of the world, but you're focusing on the game. Look, come on. It appeals to passive aggressives. I mean, let's be clear.
Oh dear.
These trolls are anonymous. That's why they're getting away with this.
Yeah,
okay?
but not all the gamers are trolls. I mean, I think that we need to make a clear division here. There are some people clearly on the fringe, as there are in many activities. One needs to think of football hooligans and people like that. It doesn't undermine the thing itself, does it?
It seems a bit unbalanced. I mean, being ancient, I dip my feet in. Obviously, I have a Twitter account, and I go on various different media, and very quickly sometimes things that I say get attacked in the ugliest way. I mean, in Chinese and other media, using very unpleasant physical, criticisms of one kind or another. And I've learned that subculture exists, and basically the only thing you can do is not engage with it.
We've engaged a bit with it. I have to say, I had some very interesting quotes and coming in on Twitter now. Very interesting interesting, people talking about how
dear.
games are social and things, so I think there's some intelligent interaction going on as well. But anyway,
I'm going to get trolled, aren't I?
draw your own conclusions, but do it nicely. Anyway, stay with us. Much more coming up here on Business Matters after we take a break for some news.